Yes, sir.
Smile and learn.
Today we are going to learn about the parts of the eye. The eye is the sense organ of sight. It is in charge of collecting information from everything that surrounds us related to shapes, colors, sizes, and distances. The eye transmits the information to the brain, which makes us aware of what is happening around us. Imagine you see the green traffic light. The eye will transmit the information to the brain, and this will signal the muscles to move so that we can start crossing the street. These are the parts of the eye. The function of the lacrimal gland is to produce tears, an element of great...
Lacrimal gland. That is used for what?
Secreting tears.
Produce tears and secrete.
Okay.
great importance, as tears carry nutrients and oxygen. Tears also help to keep the eye clean and moist. Did you know that our eyes produce tears constantly without us realizing it? The main function of the eyelids is to protect the eye. Our eyelids move unconsciously several times per minute, meaning that they do so without us realizing it. Have you ever noticed that we tend to close our eyes when it's windy? Our eyelids move downwards to prevent unwanted elements from entering the eye, such as dust or sand. This also happens when our eye gets really close to an object, or when there's a lot of light. The function of the eyebrows is to protect the eye from sweat or rain. The function of the eyelashes is to protect the eye from dust or sand. Did you know that eyelashes also shield our eyes from direct sunlight? The cornea is a transparent layer that helps our eye to focus on objects. It is a very important part of the eye, but it's hardly visible because the cornea is a semi-transparent tissue. The iris controls the amount of light that enters the pupil, and it is also the part of the eye that has color. That's why we say that some people have blue eyes, while others have brown or green eyes. Did you know that eye color is an inherited trait? The pupil is a black circle situated in the middle of the iris and allows light to enter the eye. When there's a lot of light, pupils become smaller. In other words, they contract. While in low light, the size of the pupil increases, meaning that pupils dilate. The retina is located at the back of the eyeball, and it's made up of millions of light-sensitive cells. The retina is in charge of receiving the light and transmitting this information to the brain through the optic nerve. The eye lens permits the eye to focus on objects that we see at a distance. As we grow older, the eye lens may start losing this ability. That's why elderly people have blurred vision. We call this eye fatigue or cataract. The optic nerve is like a messenger. It carries the visual information from the retina to the brain. Sometimes, certain parts of the eye won't work properly. This causes vision problems. To solve them and be able to see clearly, some people need to wear glasses. Vision problems may also cause vision loss. This is known as blindness or visual impairment. And that was all about the parts of the eye. Interesting, right?
I've switched over to an anterior view showing the whole eyeball to show you the ciliary body, which I've highlighted in green. You can see how it encircles the eyeball. The ciliary body itself is comprised of two parts, the ciliary muscle and ciliary processes. I've sliced the eyeball in half, and we've rotated around to look at the eyeball in section. Let's just review the structures that we have already discussed so that you are oriented to this view. You can see the outer fibrous sclera in continuity with the cornea anteriorly. You can also see the inner vascular choroid and the ciliary body here in green. The ciliary muscle consists of a collection of smooth muscle fibers arranged in three orientations: longitudinal, circular, and radial. When these muscles contract, the diameter of the circular ciliary body reduces in size. Projecting from the surface of the ciliary body are the ciliary processes. These attach the lens to the ciliary body via these fibres which you can see here, known as zonular fibres. Collectively, the zonular fibres form the suspensory ligament of the lens. The ciliary body therefore controls the shape of the lens. As I mentioned before, when the ciliary muscle contracts, the circular ciliary body reduces in size. When this happens, the zonular fibres therefore slacken, reducing the tension applied to the outside of the lens, allowing the lens to return to a more rounded shape. This process is known as accommodation and adjusts the lens for near vision. Conversely, when the ciliary body is relaxed, the diameter of the ciliary body is greater, which means the zonular fibres are held tight, pulling the lens flat. This optimizes the lens for long-distance vision. In addition to adjusting the lens shape, the ciliary body also contributes to the formation of aqueous humour. The final structure of the vascular layer is the iris. This is a circular structure with an aperture in the centre called the pupil. The iris is the component of the eye which gives you your eye colour. It has two arrangements of fibres which control the size of the pupil: circular fibres and radial fibres. The circular fibres make up the sphincter pupillae muscle, which is innervated by the parasympathetic nervous system. Activation of this system causes constriction of the pupil, which thereby limits the amount of light that can enter the eye. The radial fibres, on the other hand, make up the dilator pupillae muscle, which are innervated by the sympathetic nervous system and cause dilatation of the pupil, thereby increasing the amount of light that can enter the eye. I've highlighted the iris in green and sliced the eyeball in half. Let's rotate around to view the eyeball in section and view the relationship of the iris to the other structures we have covered so far. The inner layer of the eye consists of the retina, the light-detecting part of the eye. The retina itself is comprised of two cellular layers, the neural layer and the pigmented layer. The neural layer consists of photoreceptors, the light-detecting cells of the retina. It is located posteriorly and laterally in the eye. The pigmented layer lies underneath the neural layer and is attached to the choroid layer. It acts to support the neural layer and continues around the whole inner surface of the eye. Anteriorly, the pigmented layer continues, but the neural layer does not. This part is known as the non-visual retina. Posteriorly and laterally, both layers of the retina are present. This is the optic part of the retina. The optic part of the retina can be viewed during ophthalmoscopy or fundoscopy. The centre of the retina is marked by an area known as the macula lutea. It is yellowish in colour and highly pigmented. The macula contains a depression called the fovea centralis, which has a high concentration of cones, which are the light-sensitive receptor cells which function best in brightly lit conditions and are responsible for high acuity colour vision. The area that the optic nerve enters the retina is known as the optic disc. It contains no light-detecting cells and is therefore referred to as the blind spot of the retina. The central retinal artery enters at this point, and its branches are visible at this point when viewed during fundoscopy. There are a few remaining structures to discuss to cover the basic gross anatomy of the eyeball. There are two fluid-filled areas in the eye, known as the anterior and posterior chambers. The anterior chamber is located between the cornea and the iris. The posterior chamber is a small chamber located behind the iris and anterior to the lens and suspensory ligaments. The two chambers are continuous with one another via the pupillary opening. The chambers are filled with aqueous humor, which is a clear plasma-like fluid that nourishes and protects the eye. The aqueous humor is secreted first into the posterior chamber and flows into the anterior chamber via the pupil, and is then absorbed into the canal of Schlemm, also known as the scleral venous sinus. This channel encircles the eye, lying at the point between the cornea and the iris. You can see this highlighted in blue on this model. If the drainage of aqueous humor is obstructed, the intraocular pressure will rise, a condition known as glaucoma. The lens separates these two chambers from the vitreous chamber, which fills the eyeball with a transparent, gel-like substance known as vitreous humor or vitreous body, extending from behind the lens to the retina posteriorly. So that's an overview of the gross anatomy of the eyeball. In the next